Dámy a pánové, ještě jednou vám všem dobrý podvečer, nebo chcete-li pozdní odpoledne. Jsem moc ráda, že jsme se sešli opět v poměrně hojném počtu tady v Kongresovém centru v tomto přednáškovém sále. My jsme v průběhu dnešního dne vyslechli příspěvky, které zdůrazňovaly to, že v současné době prochází evropské zemědělství a potravinářský průmysl opravdu zatěžkávací zkouškou. A to ať už kvůli geopolitické situaci, klimatickým změnám a dalším věcem. Ale ono je nutné hledat nejenom krátkodobá, ale především i střednědobá a dlouhodobá řešení. Jak zabezpečit dostatek potravin, jak posílit konkurenceschopnost evropského zemědělství. Cíle, které si Evropská unie vytyčila v rámci Zelené dohody pro Evropu, jsou nepochybně ambiciózní, ale současně mohou být pro potravinovou soběstačnost a evropské zemědělství možná i likvidační. Jaká je tedy budoucnost evropské produkce potravin? Jaká je budoucnost produkce krmiv? My se pokusíme na tuto otázku nahlédnout v následujících minutách. Dámy a pánové, dovolte mi, abych vám představila hosty této panelové diskuse. Našimi hosty jsou paní docentka Jaroslava Ovesná z Výzkumného ústavu rostlinné výroby. Dobrý den.
Dobrý den.
Jsem také moc ráda, že pozvání na tuto mezinárodní vědeckou konferenci přijal pan Hagen Duenbostel ze společnosti KWS Saat. Dobrý den. Guten Tag. Stejně tak jsem ráda, že pozvání přijal i Marek Kumprecht, zastupující spolek pro komodity a krmiva Praha, která je součástí Evropské federace výrobců krmných směsí. Dobrý den.
Dobrý den.
A stejně tak zdravím také pana Jiřího Lehejčka z České technologické platformy pro ekologické zemědělství IFOAM Organics Europe, Mezinárodní federace hnutí za ekologické zemědělství. Vítejte u nás. Tak jako jsem to dělala při předchozích přednáškách a stručně jsem představila naše přednášející hosty, dovolte, abych jenom velmi telegraficky představila naše dnešní hosty nebo hosty, kteří se účastní této panelové diskuse. Paní docentka Jaroslava Ovesná je genetička, molekulární bioložka, biochemička. Je to specialistka na rostlinnou výrobu, zabývající se transformací brambor, kapustovitých rostlin. Působí ve Výzkumném ústavu rostlinné výroby, je autorkou celé řady odborných publikací a také koordinátorkou národních a mezinárodních projektů. Je předsedkyní vědeckého výboru pro geneticky modifikované potraviny a krmiva zřízeného Ministerstvem zemědělství České republiky. Generální ředitel společnosti KWS Saat, pan doktor Hagen Duenbostel, je absolventem univerzit v Řezně, v Passově v Německu, doktorát potom obhájil na univerzitě v Göttingenu a ve společnosti KWS působí 20 let. Od roku 2015 je také členem výkonné rady Německého svazu pěstitelů rostlin v Bonnu. V loňském roce se Hagen Duenbostel stal členem představenstva společnosti CH Behring Zone AG a KG Advisory Board v německém Ingelheimu. Pan Marek Kumprecht, zastupující spolek pro komodity a krmiva Praha, která je součástí Evropské federace výrobců krmných směsí, působí v krmivářském průmyslu 30 let. Jeho hlavním zaměřením jsou krmiva a výživa drůbeže. Řadu let také působí ve vysokých manažerských pozicích v nejrůznějších společnostech. Je zástupcem spolku pro komodity a krmiva Praha, který zastupuje právě tento spolek v Evropské asociaci krmivářského průmyslu. A ještě mi dovolte představit pana doktora Jiřího Lehejčka z České technologické platformy pro ekologické zemědělství. Angažuje se v hnutí ekologického zemědělství téměř 10 let. 2 roky byl viceprezidentem správní rady IFOAM Organics Europe a dodnes se podílí na její činnosti. A Jiří Lehejček působí také jako vysokoškolský pedagog a publikuje v oblasti udržitelnosti a adaptace na změnu klimatu. Tak, doufám, že jsem to neřekla příliš rychle, že se našim skvělým tlumočnicím, kterým tímto děkuji za celodenní spolupráci, podařilo všechno dobře přetlumočit. No a dámy a pánové, dovolte mi, abych odstartovala tuto panelovou diskusi jednou společnou otázkou na vás všechny a poprosím přibližně o 5minutovou odpověď, tak jak vám to vyjde. Řekněte mi, jak z vašeho pohledu vidíte budoucnost evropské produkce potravin a krmiv a s jakými problémy se budou v těch následujících letech zemědělci a producenti potýkat? A co jim to všechno naopak může přinést pozitivního? Kdo se jako první ujme slova? Dáme přednost dámě. Jaroslava Ovesná.
Okay, good afternoon. I will try to answer this highly difficult question. Unfortunately, I forgot my crystal ball at home, and to predict the future development is quite difficult at the moment. We are living in quite teetering and period that is changing all our certainties. We have never predict that again the war could enter the European continent. We did not expect that we would face the disease outbreak, I mean COVID, and we are as well facing the changing climate and that global warming has already entered the region, and the farmers and other stakeholders have to face so many difficulties and hurdles at the moment. In fact, it's climate change that is challenging for all of us, and we need to find resources and strengths to diminish the impact of such changes. Today we have listened several reasons why we need to use innovations, why we need to use new scientific tools and new scientific development to prevent the drop of agriculture production. And as well, we notice that the instruments that were used during and introduced during the Green Revolution should not be used anymore in the future to keep biodiversity, to keep sustainability, and to produce more safe and enough food. That means that the only tool that remain from the period of Green Revolution are the modern cultivars. And here we could see the new perspective, and question is how we will use that tools as well in Europe. We know from the world that new genomic techniques are widely used, so that I would repeat the information presented here by the speaker from the morning and early afternoon. And we see that the new genomic techniques are widely used for improving of commercial microorganisms as well for animals, and we all today are speaking about the plants and plant cultivars. For sure, they are a very good perspective of development of such plans as well in the European community, but everything depends on public perception, on perception of different production sector in Europe. I believe that these techniques and product of these techniques will be acceptable for the European citizens and the European farmers and all types of consumers. But there is still a way in front of us to explain carefully, or perhaps to be silent, I don't know, about the new product, their possibilities and their impact upon environment and impact on the food security and safety. The system of information will be probably, from my point of view, very important, and we indeed need to find a way how to efficiently communicate the advantages and benefits that could these techniques bring for the farmers and especially for the consumers. I believe that in the future all innovation like new genomic techniques but as well precision farming will impact European agriculture, that all the farmers and consumers across Europe will have a chance to utilize them. And it's necessary as well to adapt them locally. In case of plant cultivars, we need to develop the system how to produce cultivars that will be locally adapted, that will have the features that are fitting for specific environments. Only I'm a little bit afraid that at the moment our knowledge is not so extensive that allow us the use of new genomic techniques to extent we would indeed wish. It's not only about one, two or couple of genes, but it's about the whole genome architecture and whole genome function. I hope that the investment into the science and technology of the countries and of the companies will be huge enough to support the future development. Still, we are discussing about the use or not use or labeling and not labeling of such product, and everything will depend on the future development in Europe. The possibility to exchange not only the knowledge but as well the goods, and I hope that it will not be impacted by war that are closer and closer to us. In such a case, I think that the development will be much faster, but I really believe that we will need new technologies for our future sustainability.
Thank you very much. Dámy a pánové, navzdory tomu, že paní docentka předeslala už v úvodu, že nemá žádnou křišťálovou kouli, tak jsme se dozvěděli nebo jsme zjistili, jaká je její dlouhodobá vize. Já vám děkuji za odpověď. Myslím, že je na co se ptát potom v té následující diskusi. Teď mi dovolte, abych stejnou otázku položila i panu Hagenu Duenbostlovi, tedy jak z vašeho pohledu bude vypadat budoucnost evropské produkce potravin a krmiv a opět, s jakými problémy se zemědělci a producenti mohou potýkat a naopak, co jim to v budoucnu může přinést pozitivního?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me here on stage for a panel discussion. I'm very pleased to be here with you. It is about the future of sustainable agriculture in Europe, I understand, and looking into your faces and listening to your contributions, my impression is that I'm sitting in a plant breeder seminar. So I'm surrounded by experts here, which is great, because in many regulatory framework discussions, we primarily face a lack of understanding and knowledge, which certainly is not the case here in this auditorium, which is great. So from my point of view, representing a seed breeding company that has been successfully working for more than 165 years, we are looking into the future with the angle of not redefining things or wishful thinking or the belief that we could change or determine the marketplace, neither for farmers nor for consumers. We take this very straight and forward, accepting that Europe has laid out its objectives in the framework of the Farm to Fork initiative. We could debate certainly for hours whether the 4 objectives and the quantitative targets or the timeline is appropriate or not, but I think all of us here in this room, we can agree that with regard to chemical crop protection, to nitrogen use efficiency, with regard to the level of organic farming and biodiversity, we are sitting in the same boat and rowing the same boat. So from our perspective as a plant breeder, this is nothing new to us at all. We just, as most of you know, we spend our lives and not only providing constantly more yield increase for the main crops that farmers desperately need, but also with a full set of tolerance breeding and resistance breeding, conventionally bred, also with mutagenesis to a large extent, which happens in the field under sunlight. Everybody obviously is very well aware about those backgrounds as well. And we, even as a smaller breeding company, we're also engaged in North and South America to a large extent with GM technologies that came into place where marketplace is simply requiring and asking and demanding for it. So please take from my point of view that we are not at all or not involved in ideological standpoints. We are serving the organic seed market as a leading company in Germany, in matter of fact, the conventional market and all technology, applying all technologies. To learn from each other, to us, is the most important thing, and to listen carefully what are the concerns, not only from experts, but consumers, farmers, in our case, obviously the first stakeholder group that is most important. And I will close my remarks in order not to getting too long, because I know it's really about NGTs and what's going to happen. In my personal view, we are facing 3 pillars of concern. And the first pillar is methodology or product. How can we make sure that new products that are bred with NGTs are serving the needs with regard to sustainable benefits, sustainability benefits in the European market? So that's number 1. And just to make a little bit of snapshot here, it's not about the methodology, obviously, everybody knows this in this room, it's about the product itself, and we need to find a way how to register varieties once regulation has changed potentially, and extend the profile of those products by sustainability criteria. We have well understood that in the industry. It's not that everybody is a great fan of that, but I think this will be a precondition to talk about the rest. So that will be pillar or column number 1. The second thing is transparency, labeling, and traceability. Also, from our point of view, personally, KWS, we do that already. We are the first breeding company, I think, globally, where you can see on the homepage all methodologies, all methods involved in the production of one specific seed variety. You can select by methodology, or you can check back from the variety into the background, and you would even see on our homepage 3 little gray boxes which say SDN 1, 2, and 3. And obviously, it's not relevant today because we're sitting here figuring out how those technologies could come into place. But in our homepage, you already can see that. Yeah, so hopefully, very, very soon from now, those boxes will be actively positioned and actively used. Yeah, but it's not obviously today. And last but not least, the third column is the question of variety protection, plant variety protection, the breeder's privilege. This is the holy, to me, even the holy grail. We shall not interfere and damage the breeders' privilege in Europe. That's key. That's a key assignment that we all have, and the industry has well understood it. What we cannot at the same time change today, the patent directive, so we will have to live with the status quo legally, and that's what we are doing also. As a company, we are applying for our patents. Before Rule 28, we also applied for native trade patents, but we put it on the platform. We're again the first company where you can shop patents, native trade patents. They're freely accessible on our platform, and we are tending to do the same thing with NGTs in the industry, as long as the patent directive is as it is. If it changes one day, that's probably a good day. Yeah? It's not me to judge. But certainly we need to figure out how to work in between until those changes appear. And I hope those little spotlights give some energy into debate or discussion later. Thank you.
Thanks a lot to Hagen Duenbostel. Možná, kdyby byl mezi námi ještě pan poslanec Hlaváček, tak by opět z toho trojúhelníku, z těch 3 pilířů udělal ještě 4. Možná já za něj bych přidala ještě vzájemnou komunikaci. Tak, pojďme dál. Dovolte mi, abych se obrátila na Marka Kumprechta, opět se stejnou otázkou. Pokud Marek Kumprecht chce, můžu ji zopakovat. Opět, jak z vašeho pohledu vidíte budoucnost evropské produkce potravin a krmiv, s jakými problémy se v budoucnu v souvislosti s tímto mohou zemědělci a producenti potýkat a naopak, co pozitivního jim to může přinést?
Thank you for invitation and thank you for your question. I'd like it a little bit modified and made it more specific from the point of view of feed industry. I'm representing here the FIFAG, which is the European Feed Industry Association, consisting of a national feed association from most of the member countries. The European feed production is stable for a very long time. It's all the time about 150 million tons throughout the EU 27, and we can see that we've been faced to many challenges, and I'd like to focus about the further challenges because this is from the point of the feed industry. And as I said, the feed production is stable. On one hand side, we can see the trends like the reduction of animal origin, food consumption or elimination. On the other hand, we have the growing population, even in Europe, and the production is reduced by the improvement in livestock production. I mean this feed conversion rate, which in this parameter we did a huge progress over the years together with animal geneticists. So in terms of the challenges, of course, one of our biggest challenge for today is to reach the F2F target. There are some defined targets which has direct effect on our industry. The direct effect is the reduction of antimicrobials in livestock production, which lead us to reduce significantly the production of medicated feed. Indirect impact is the reduction of pesticides. And of course, we are afraid that it may negatively affect the availability of raw materials, which are the crops. And in that regard, definitely, new genomic technique are a big opportunity for us as a feed industry strongly support it. We have only one problem with that, and this is the labeling. We remember the long story about GMOs. In the end, we learned how to live with this coexistence of two words, because for us it means production of feed in two lines, and as a conventional and non-GM, which is really demanding, especially with existing rules and limits for contamination. But we have learned how to live with the production of feed, which is labeled as of GM or non-GM. With these new genomic techniques, we really need the clear rules, fully which will be unified in the fully harmonized rules for the EU 2028. Then we can live with that, and we really invite that. Another challenge for us is and I will escape from this already, from this new genetic techniques, genomic techniques, is the circularity. Over the years, I've been active in feed industry for 30 years. If I look at the recipe for chicken food 30 years ago, it consists of just a few raw materials: cereals, soybean, some other protein source, fat, and minerals and vitamins. If you look at the recipes today, especially in Europe, we can see really long list of raw materials. We have very rich recipes consisting of 30-35 different raw materials, when the original raw materials like the non-modified crops are about 50%. I just look at at the list of chapters of our material, which FEFAC issued this year as publication of Circular Feed, and I can read you just the names of the chapters: citrus fruit processing, wheat and rice milling, sugar production, beer brewing, grass biorefining, starch and ethanol production, oilseed crushing and vegetable oil refining, gelatin production, dairy processing, meat production, and animal byproducts, and former foodstuffs. So we learned how to use a lot of different byproducts to feed animals, I would say, more precise, cheaper, and use also to coexist with the other industries. What is the real challenge, which we write the map this year, that we did a huge progress so far in this circular feed concept. This year we wrote them up because I remember that the Commission in 2021 clearly declared that food security is not an issue feed security is not an issue for Europe. Since the conflict in the Ukraine, immediately all the flow maps has been rewritten, this became to be a problem. And another issue is the energy. We became immediately a huge competitor with energy production, because all these products, what I can read, and which has been used for the feed production, can be easily used for biogas production. All the organic materials can be used, and we became to be immediate competitor with energy production. And this is one of the biggest challenge. Of course, we have some other challenges. I can speak about it. I spoke about the deforestation in the discussion, because the European population is really interesting. What is the origin of the raw materials? We can see also some positive changes, which we can observe higher awareness, especially of our customers and our partners, which are farmers, of the fact that some measures which might seem restrictive at the beginning could be very efficient. And I think this is just two examples. I remember a lot. So in 2004, the ban of antibiotic growth promoters. Everyone said that it will have a negative effect on the animal production. In the end, it improved the health status of all the farms, and the production has improved. The limits for welfare, when a couple of years ago we issued, the Commission issued the rules for maximum stocking density in the farms. Again, farmers clearly declared that it will have negative effect on the economy, on the efficiency of the farms. In the end, we learned that with the lower stocking density, we are produced much more efficiently. So I can see also some positive thing on that. And of course, and I think I don't want to run out of my time, the biggest issue, of course, is sustainability. But I'd like to come back to the beginning, last sentence. The biggest challenge long term for us is to produce sufficient amount of safe feed in all the times. Thank you.
Já děkuji Marku Kumprechtovi, který zdůraznil, že nové genomické techniky jsou pro oblast jeho působení opravdu mocným a klíčovým nástrojem, který potřebují. A velmi pozorně ho poslouchal Jiří Lehejček, který si také dělal poznámky. Tak stejná otázka, pane doktore, i pro vás. Jak z vašeho pohledu bude vypadat budoucnost evropské produkce potravin a krmiv a opět negativa, která přinese a pozitiva, která by případně mohla přinést?
Děkuji za otázku. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks for organizing this conference, and thank you that even the voice of organic can have its say here. I believe, and the organic movement in general believes, that to feed the population of the world, it is only possible in a climate resilient landscape. If we have no climate resilient landscape, there will be a significant threat for the population as such and as we know it today. And that is like the cornerstone, which has been repeatedly mentioned at the recent COP conference as well. So all the sectors, not just agriculture, but including agriculture, have to put the efforts to achieve this climate resilient landscape. And there was also the part of the question is about the farmers. Nowadays, honestly speaking, I think the farming and the farmers is not perceived, at least in Eastern European countries, but I think it's similar all over the EU. This job is not perceived as a very prestigious. But in case the farmers will help this important and needed transition, they will become a very important and prestigious part of the society, and it's rewarding itself. If we are taking aside even also the principle public goods for public money, which is important and which should stay in the middle of European supporting and funding policies like common agriculture policy of the EU, this is rewarding itself. Because if we have this climate resilient landscape, we will have less erosion, which we all need. We will have higher biodiversity. We'll have less use of pesticides. We'll have less flash floods, and we'll even have less pesticides in the groundwater. For instance, the number for the Czech Republic, which is presented by the Czech Hydrometeorological Institute, is that over half of the groundwater is polluted with above limit concentration of one or more pesticides. And I think that the organic agriculture, and not only I, but the whole movement and European citizens think that the organic agriculture is a way to get there. We think an increasing amount of studies supported this transition, stating that it can feed the world under three circumstances. Number one, there is need for healthy diet, less dependent on meat, for instance. Number two, repeatedly mentioned today, is the less food waste and better distribution of the food. Nowadays we have about 1/3 of the food is being wasted, which is enormous amount. And number three is also the reduction of obesity, obviously, because in the developed countries, about one third of the people are obese or overweighted. For the short term, I think it has been mentioned many times that farm to fork strategy is a concrete setup for the future of European agriculture by the 2030. But the question was also maybe for a midterm and a longer term. And in that case, it very much depends on what my press speakers said already. Number one, closing the cycles. And number two, utilization of climate neutral but relatively cheap resource of energy. This is again something what all the sectors need, not just agriculture. And we get there. I think the future of the agriculture may look like that close to the human settlements we'll have a relatively high intensity organic greenhouse agriculture, and there will be decreasing intensity of the agriculture towards the wilderness at the periphery of the countries and Europe. Yeah.
That's all.
That would be it for now.
Okay, perfect. Thanks a lot for your answer. Už o tom Jiří Lehejček mluvil. Lidstvo nakrmí pouze krajina, která bude odolná vůči změnám klimatu. Tak, to jsou postřehy našich hostů. Dámy a pánové, tak teď je tedy ten jedinečný prostor pro vaše dotazy. Máte nějaké otázky, směle je pokládejte, neostýchejte se. Ta příležitost dotázat se našich hostů je jedinečná. Tak, poprosím opět asistentku o pomoc s mikrofonem. První ruka je nahoře.
Good afternoon, good almost evening. My name is Sebastian Żwana. I'm Polish attaché in permanent representation of Poland to the European Union. I am dealing with the fight at food safety, so we are now facing the first legislative proposal dealing with the reduction targets, which is the proposal on sustainable use of plant protection products. And in this regard, I would like to ask you the following question: do you think this is a question for all of the speakers? Do you think that sticking to this very severe reduction targets, in particular, I'm thinking about this too, which is 50% for PPPs and 20% for fertilizers, which is on the way, the proposal as we are hearing in Brussels. And on the other hand, we are receiving the document on the availability of fertilizers, which is a bit tricky. But do you think that in the times of the crisis, of the energy crisis, of the food security crisis, I will just give you one data in Poland. So in my country, 2 years ago we had almost no inflation rate. Now we had almost 30% inflation rate in food prices. And according to the only cumulative assessment of the whole strategy, thanks to USDA, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we didn't deliver our own on the European level. The food prices will go up when fulfilling the strategy. So should we rethink these goals? I'm thinking of this too. So 50% in PPPs and 20% in fertilizers by 2030, or should we go forward with the impacts that they may have on the availability of food, the prices, the possible increase in imports, and the possible drop in our production? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Who will answer first? Maybe you, Hagen Duenbostel.
Yeah. Many thanks for that question. I'm really happy to hear that question because you remember when I did my initial statement, I was referring also to the timelines. So my concern is not so much about the 50% and the 20%. We do have, and that is irrespective of NGTs, right? So we have huge breakthroughs in especially fungus, meaning reduction on fungicides by integrated plant protection from breeding. We have made huge steps in crops like sugar beet, but also in corn and other crops. So I think, and considering that the fungicides portion, the ratio of fungicides in the overall mix is quite significant. And also on insect, we have made a lot of progress. Insect resistance, of course, is a huge thing. It's much more difficult, and for good reasons. On the other side of the ocean, many of those insect-resistant traits are based on GM, but also we have found from classic breeding and also for plant genetic resources, lots of creative ways how to address that. So I would not put the question mark as an ambition behind the numbers. We are fully committed to work on that intensively. And with nitrogen uptake, I can really say that on that piece, we have, I would look back now on sugar beet, for instance, we have increased the sugar yield per hectare within the last decades by 10 times, and at the same time we have reduced the absolute amount of nitrogen by a quarter. So, I mean, if you put that on a ton of sugar, it's just a fantastic ratio. So just as an indication, but what I'm saying here is maybe 2030 is a little bit tight, but for sure we can do a lot in that direction. Last sentence, of course, and I excluded it earlier in my statement. Of course, NGT play a role here. What we did like the last 2 years, and some of you will have read it, we have created with 54 companies projects called Pilton, which is a fungus tolerant wheat, winter wheat to come. It's already in the greenhouse. It's functioning very well. And we are talking potentials in the ballpark of 20 to 30%. So if you just take that as an example, the 50% overall, if you apply integrated plant protection on a larger scale, I think is not out of reach.
Thanks a lot. Who wants to take answer?
I don't feel competent to answer clearly whether it's achievable or not, in what condition, under what condition. Definitely we needed tools, and NGT is one of the tools which may help us to reach the targets. If I put some targets together and looking to my neighbors, of course, also it would help if one of the target is to reach 25% of the farming to be produced to crops, or the land should be under organic farming. It would help a lot if organic farming rules would accept NGT as a tool on the scientific basis that it could be used, because we remember the story with non-GM, which is I don't want to be judged, but partly based on emotions. And if we stick on the scientific approach, it would help us a lot. And as regard the future, definitely it's certain restriction. And you mentioned the inflation. Of course, we do expect that it would have certain negative effect on the maybe consumption of meat and some other products. On the other hand, if we think about the prices of that, you are Polish, I am Czech, you remember how big part of our salaries we spent for the food 20-25 years ago. All the governments support cheap food production, and I think that food should be more expensive, and the customers should pay fair prices for the food, because for me it's really strange to pay the more for 1 kilo 1 kilos for some vegetables than for 1 kilo. If you pay more for 1 kilo for tomatoes compared to 1 kilo of chicken meat, it's strange. And so it may have negative effect, but whether we are able to reach it or not, who knows?
Thank you for your answer, Mr. Kumprecht, and reaction of Mr. Lehejček.
Thank you for the question. Maybe first of all, on the legislation itself. As far as I know, there is quite a challenge also with the comparability of the data within the EU countries, and like the starting line, right? So if all goes as it is set today, we'll have first comparable data only for the year 2028, which is only 2 years before the target of the EU. In this world or in that setting, this is very difficult to achieve anything, if not impossible, because if we are not able to measure it, we can state 50%, we can say 20%, but what is the starting like, we don't know. Because nowadays the harmonized criteria which are used, first, they are not harmonized among the EU, and the second, also, unfortunately, due to the push of our Ministry of Agriculture, and second, they are not based on the amount of the agent, but most largely they are used. They are based on the amount, on the volume of the pesticides used. So, for instance, organic pesticides, which are used in organic agriculture, they have quantitative setting number one, and that makes them in that respect uncomparable with higher density pesticides which are used in conventional agriculture. So talking about this goal, yeah, it's very difficult to foresee anything because we don't know the scene which is set is does not allow it. But of course, this is just reporting. But another and more important view is the reality in the landscape, the reality in the groundwaters, the surface waters, and the soil. And there, the change has to happen. And in many countries which are organically maybe more developed than the Czech Republic, for instance, we can see that the closing the gap between the yields is a reality. And as the organic agriculture doesn't use organic pesticides, or does not use the synthetic pesticides and the fertilizers, it can significantly help to achieve this goal, as my press speaker was mentioning. So this is the way, and also with the respect of the energy prices and the increasing prices of these PPPs, I think many farmers will converge just naturally. Hopefully.
Thank you. Paní docentka Ovesná.
As well, thank you for your quite interesting questions. I'm not expert in IPM, but you're right that it's quite difficult task to achieve that goals given by European Community, European Commission. But in fact, we have several tools how to minimize the use of pesticides and herbicides and other protective agent. First, we have the cultivars that nowadays are even resistant against diseases, and we are trying to find as well the cultivars that are resistant towards several pests, and it's not impossible. And using such varieties as a protection tool, it's nowadays possible. I don't want to say that it's easy. And we have as well other tools that are usually called smart protection tools that are very precise, that could be used for monitoring, that could be used for disease outbreak prediction, pest prediction, but in such a case it's necessary to stress that the use of such a tools is not harmonized across the Europe, and especially the countries near to the west are very advanced in using such modern tools. And if you are speaking about the inflation, I'm afraid that our growers are not in all the case able to pay for such a modern tools that could really decrease the use of the plant protection agents. So I think that the tool is that the target is very difficult to reach, but we have to do all what we are able to perform to achieve the goal in appropriate time.
Thank you very much. I hope you are satisfied with these answers from our panelist. Tak, dámy a pánové, další dotaz můžete položit, ještě máme čas. Prosím, zase poprosím pana asistenta o mikrofon. Řekněte, neviděla jsem úplně.
To je pán Sásovič.
Dobrá, tak poprosíme nejdřív dotaz tady a potom dostanete prostor vy.
Děkuji za slovo. Já se představím, Václav Hlaváček. Nemám nic společného s Martinem Hlaváčkem, kromě jeho příjmení. Jsem asi jediný v tomto sále, který je výkonný zemědělec. Provozuji zemědělskou výrobu více jak 40 let. V současné době hospodařím na 30 zhruba hektarech. Jsem ekologický zemědělec. 12,5 hektaru mám v ekologické produkci. A jestli dovolíte, já si dovolím představit svoji vizi zemědělce, který se celý život tím živil. Green Deal jako takový je nádherná věc. Za předpokladu, že bude ochota jej zaplatit. Nikdo se neptal spotřebitelů, zdali budou a jsou ochotní zaplatit realizaci Green Dealu. A pokud tomu tak není, a ty prostředky, které vyčlenila Evropská unie, jsou směšné v současné době, kdy žijeme v naprosto mimořádné době válečné a extrémně vysoké míry nejistoty. A vnímám, a dneska to tady v dopoledne odeznělo, že je to víceméně jako nová ideologie politiků proto, aby si uchovali své pozice. Mě to mrzí, protože jsem převzal od svých rodičů, prarodičů nějakou základnu, kterou jsem se snažil rozvíjet, uplatňovat poznatky vědy, výzkumu, inovace a tak dále. A docházím do fáze, kdy mě ta základna bude ve vlastních rukách sublimovat. Protože tak, jak je to nastaveno, tak ztratím konkurenceschopnost.
Čili, pane Hlaváčku, promiňte, že vás přerušuji.
Já se omlouvám, nechte mě domluvit. Já si myslím, že
prosím,
mám právo,
jenom už velmi stručně, protože
že mám
ten
právo
časový limit
svoji vizi, protože jsou tady jediný zemědělec.
Myslím, že nejste, že farmářů je tady mezi námi víc.
Zatím
jsme slyšeli hlasy
nedostali
ostatních.
prostor, takže já si myslím, že co ještě tady potřeba říct.
Spíš řekněte, na co byste se našich hostů chtěl zeptat. Mluvil jste o Green Deal, o tom, kdo to zaplatí.
Jestli si myslí vážně, že je to realizovatelný bez dopadu
na spotřebitele a zemědělce.
Soběstačnost a na spotřebitele.
Děkuji. Děkuji panu Hlaváčkovi. Tak děkuji za vaše postřehy, za váš názor a zároveň i za dotaz, který nakonec zazněl. Tak kdo se pokusí odpovědět jako první? Green Deal a vysoké náklady, které by mohly dopadnout na farmáře, zemědělce, producenty. Tak já dám nejdřív prostor panu Lehejčkovi, přihlásil se jako první.
Thanks for the question.
I think in general there is not a lack of money in a common agriculture policy, but they are not well targeted. I mentioned the principle public goods for public money, but nowadays most of those money which are allocated for the common agriculture policy among the member states, they are used to finance and secure the business as usual. They are not bringing us very much forward and closer to the targets of the Farm to Fork and the European Green Deal. But if the money are better targeted, if the European citizens are getting for their money the real value, the more resilient landscape and more resilient agriculture, we are able to get there. But nowadays, as I mentioned, they are used to finance the business as usual, and regrettably, even the new strategic plans of the member states, they are not ambitious as they should be, even according European Commission, not only according to the NGOs.
Perfektní, děkuji za odpověď. Poprosím ještě o odpověď pana Duenbostela.
Yeah, I will keep that short and simple, but I'm also super happy that we are touching base on the financials of the Green Deal. And I can really say, if you look back the last, 40, 50 years, by the continuous improvement of yield increases from plant breeding, let's call it 1.5%, and we have third-party evidence that overall crops, I think it was the 1.2 or something % per year as a compound growth, including then the substitution of chemical crop protection and the increase of nitrogen efficiency, has given a huge leverage on the input per output, if you can think about it. So in principle, what I've said earlier, plant breeders are calculating at the moment, are not calculating with extra monies. What we are trying to do is to accelerate and to speed up our progress in order to substitute chemical crop protection and fertilizer. And I'm in the luxurious situation sitting here because our company is not involved in chemical crop protection. Right? So every innovation we do is just to substitute inputs that we want to say goodbye to. Yeah? So let's give it a try. Not, you can ask all these questions, but what if we just collectively try our very best to improve the situation as quickly as we can? Yeah? And not building roadblocks in front of us completely unnecessary. So we can do the financials as well based on innovation, and plant breeding is the solution for that for sure.
Thank you very much. Děkuji za odpověď panu Hlaváčkovi. Poprosím, protože už nemáme mnoho času, opravdu jenom o velmi stručnou otázku a také stručné odpovědi našich hostů.
Okay, my name is Ivo Frebod. I'm from Palacký University, almost also represent here European Federation of Biotechnology. I have one comment which is related to the general discussion. The reason for rejection of GMO was probably the fear that the foreign gene inserted can escape. In the case of NGT, we have no foreign gene, so I think this concern is not real anymore. But the question goes to Mr. Lehejčka. And I was very much pleased that he mentioned intensive indoor farming as one of the solutions that may bring us further. And I'm interested if there is any assessment of cost-benefit analysis or something, because my first concern would be that it's expensive. We need to build expensive capacities, and we need more and more energy to run these capacities, these facilities.
Thank you very much. Indoor farming and Mr. Lehejček.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. I was tackling in my response to the first question, far away future, which is based on the two conditions. Number one is the climate neutral energy resources, which are relatively cheap, as I mentioned, and the closed cycles as well. So if this is achieved, then the indoor farming close to the municipalities, close to the big demand of the food is, I think, one of the ways which will perform and which will just happen because it will be effective. But if those conditions are not met, then obviously the indoor farming are not a solution for the climate resilient landscape. Is that answer for your question?
Thank you. Dámy a pánové, nemáme příliš mnoho času. Poprosím paní ředitelku Jitku Gecovou o dotaz. Prosím ještě o mikrofon. Máme tady. Můžu poprosit, asistentka už jde. Děkuji. Pan Hlaváček byl rychlejší.
Děkuji, Václav. Jitka Gecová, odbor bezpečnosti potravin, Ministerstvo zemědělství České republiky. Já bych měla dotaz na pana Lehejčka. My se stále častěji setkáváme s reakcí ekologických zemědělců, že v současné době, kdy je energetická krize, kdy mají další problémy na trhu, ta produkce přestává být konkurenceschopná a prodejná. S tím, že mají problémy vůbec to, co vyprodukovali na trhu, uplatnit a spotřebitelé nejsou ochotni tu cenu zaplatit. Já bych se chtěla zeptat, jak vidíte ten cíl Evropské komise v Green Dealu nastavit vlastně ve všech členských státech procento ekologické produkce až na 25%. Myslíte si, že je reálné, že vůbec budou evropští spotřebitelé schopni tu produkci koupit a zaplatit?
Děkuji.
Děkuji za tu otázku. I think we have to get back to the formation of the price. Organic agriculture, as we all know, it saves the money to the public by many means. And nowadays, when the support schemes, which I already mentioned, are not viable and are supporting the business as usual, then it obviously may make organic production more expensive. But if the fair pricing is set and if the conventional agriculture pays for the harms which are done by the production, and not the public budgets pay for the cleaning of the water and biodiversity loss and so on, then the prices would be completely different, and obviously organic production much be cheaper than the conventional production. So I definitely would not reconsider this goal, and I think once we reach this 25%, then even the economic viability, and we all know the economy of scale, will increase the competition and decrease the prices, obviously. So it's like a snowball. We haven't mentioned the green public procurement. Only in the Czech Republic there is about 3 million of portions every day, every working day, being distributed to the consumers in the public canteens. And there is also an important. This is also an important demand scene which is now being developed in many countries. This is much more developed than in the Czech Republic. But if we see in Denmark, for instance, they have 90% of the organic in the school canteens, and this is the way how the shelf prices drop significantly as well. We don't have to go much far from the border of the Czech Republic, and we see that the organic production on the shelves in those countries is comparable or just slightly higher to the conventional one.
Já děkuji za odpověď panu Lehejčkovi. Tady ještě přikyvoval pan Duenbostel, tak jestli by chtěl i pan ředitel Duenbostel reagovat nějak na otázku paní Jitky Gecové.
Well, I pretty much share what has been said about organic farming, especially the last part. I'm a little bit scratching my head myself. If you would double the acreage as it is intended, by the given demand and price positioning, we do have a problem here. And by the way, also I'm lacking a little bit the fantasy. How could you enforce I mean, forcefully increase the percentage of organic farming, at the end you have to have an incentivization. So I'm also with my dear colleague here on the panel. The Green Deal Farm to Fork really means that we are capable to internalize the external effects, and then that provides for a huge value, as we all agree, right? And that is a huge incentive for innovation, and that's the way of thinking that we need. We need to be at fair prices, and has been said earlier also with meat consumption. It's totally fair and not only okay, but required to increase those prices. Not to force people eating less, that's not the point. The point is we need innovation in all levels of production. And that's the only way. Get rid of chemical crop protection, reduce the input on nitrogen on our fields, also giving huge impact on CO2 emissions and fertilizer, as we all know. It's the main thing. Every single unit we can avoid on nitrogen fertilizer, we have a huge impact on CO2 and also soil protection. So and all those things are clearly on our desk, and we do have the technologies to address it. Again, the question, what is the right number? I have no idea, but let's do it. Let's work ourselves into it as much and as quickly as we can, instead of just putting, roadblocks on the street, as I mentioned earlier.
Pan Duenbostel zdůraznil inovace na všech úrovních. Mimochodem o inovacích budeme hodně mluvit také v zítřejším konferenčním dni. Dámy a pánové, dovolte mi, abych se vás zeptala, jestli má někdo již poslední otázku. Využijte posledních minut a poslední příležitosti. Pokud ne, ano, vidím tamhle pána vzadu. Tak, prosím, just briefly, shortly.
Thank you very much. Kai Furner, University of Bayreuth. I'm just wondering whether, given the urgency of what is at stake, does it really make sense to contrast conventional against organic, or would it not rather be that we take, whatever we need from both systems to tackle the problems that we are? So, honestly speaking, I'm wondering whether this not would make us a bit, more future-proof than just thinking in all these old boxes. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Mr. Hagen Duenbostel.
I could not agree more. Thank you very much for your statement.
Perfect. I think we can close this panel discussion. Dámy a pánové, pochopitelně názory jsou různé, máme na ně všichni právo a právě proto, že jsou názory různorodé, jsme se tady sešli, aby zazněly věci z nejrůznějších úhlů pohledu. První den této mezinárodní vědecké konference, která má název European Agri-Food Sustainability, je v tuto chvíli za námi. My jsme zmínili celou řadu témat. Připomněli jsme to, že svět aktuálně řeší potravinovou krizi, nedostatečnost, vliv invaze na Ukrajinu, kvůli kterému ještě všechno dostalo mnohem dramatičtější rozměry. Já ale doufám, že nebudeme uzavírat tento den negativisticky nebo s nějakým hořkým podtónem. Před námi jsou další výzvy, které přinese i zítřejší konferenční den. Vlastně mě napadá jedna věc, která tady dnes zazněla jenom jednou, a to bylo připomenutí 200. výročí narození genetika Johanna Gregora Mendla. Máme to štěstí, že se tento významný muž shodou okolností narodil právě na tomto území, které tehdy ovšem se nedalo nazývat už vůbec ne Českou republikou ani Československou. Nicméně bylo to v Brně. Dámy a pánové, já vám všem děkuji za pozornost. Děkuji, že jste vydrželi v tak hojném počtu až do této chvíle. Našimi milými hosty v této panelové diskusi byli pan Hagen Duenbostel. Díky, že jste přišel. Jsem moc ráda, že je s námi i paní docentka Jaroslava Ovesná. Děkuji za účast. Za zajímavé postřehy, názory a odpovědi děkuji i panu Marku Kumprechtovi. A děkuji i Jiřímu Lehejčkovi za to, že byl s námi. Díky. Tak, Zítra se tady sejdeme nad tématy jako zemědělství šetrné ke klimatu, zajištění zemědělsko-potravinářského systému a nové genomické techniky a inovace. Čekají nás další názory, další nové pohledy. Buďte jim otevření. Teď vám všem přeji krásný večer. Zvu samozřejmě na neformální setkání s našimi hosty. Bude příležitost ještě si povídat, diskutovat, pochopitelně se dobře najíst a dát si i skleničku vína. Děkuji za pozornost a zítra se těším opět v tomto sále na viděnou. Naschledanou.